know how fully they have, um, I guess, involved themselves in the creation of ISIS, involved themselves in the creation of Al Qaeda or the Illuminati, which they call themselves the illuminated ones or the givers of light. But we all know that the letter I, the prefix I, turns any word into not. So when you deal with a word like illuminate, I want to go through this right now because I can show you how they covered this one up. The definition of illuminate. Of course, it's gonna come up some other shit. Definition illuminate. Origin illuminate, past participle of luminare, to illuminate. How you gonna illuminate and illuminate? Light up from lumen light. The word doesn't appear in our free dictionary, but the definition from our premium unabridged dictionary is offered here on a limited basis. Now, we all know that the prefix I means not. So illicit means not licit. Illegal means not legal. And it goes on to other words that start with R. Irreparable means not repairable. Irresponsible means not responsible. So how are you going to tell me that illuminate means to give light? It means not light. And they lied to us right there in our own dictionary. And so many people just look right over this. They even give a definition for kids because they want to misconstrue their minds. Illuminate, light up, decorate, help to clarify or explain. That's obviously not true. We obviously are being duped with this definition. So, I mean, it's crazy. This stuff's crazy. Right. What we're dealing with here, I mean, it's all these things are hidden in esoteric meanings, symbols, and plays on the deliberately equivocal and ambiguous language that we use every day. I mean, man, like nativus. The word native comes from the Latin word nativus. Latin word nativus. Here we go. Law definitions for nativus. Nativus. Born, innate, natural, origin. Nativus. Now when we step back, we're going to get a legal definition of nativus. Nativus, the law dictionary. In Old English law, a native, specifically one born into a condition of servitude, a born serf or villain. Nativa, a neef, a female villain, a so-called because for the most part bond by nativity. Now this is true. You're born by nativity to serve the land where you live. But what did they do? What did these people do in the past when they went and conquered other nations? They made it seem like the natives were born to serve them. They were their serf. They became, once you conquered the land, you conquered the people. So the people belonged to you just like the land did. Now that's how they I mean, man, that's pure ambiguity right there. It's crazy how this world works. And people just turn their eye to it because a lot of people who are living now, they benefit from the land that was stolen from so many other people. And that only comes from Europeans, from people coming out of Europe always wanted to take because you can't grow much in Europe. You don't hear anything about diamonds coming out of Europe, any copper or anything in any mass amounts. Small amounts, yes, but not in only mass amounts. So The Europeans, their whole mentality was to take from others, while all these other people who lived in lands that were abundant with resources, they could grow just about anything. They could dig, and if they wanted a diamond, if they cared about diamonds or gold, they could dig and find it. Some places they say, I mean, gold was just pouring out of rivers in North America and South America. That's how they found the stuff. So I mean, people to just accept this stuff and think that this is the way life is supposed to be, that we're supposed to be taking advantage of people and using the earth's resources and not replenishing them, burning the earth's resources and actually harming the atmosphere. If you think that's the way of life, that's the way things are supposed to be, and that we are somehow more civilized than our ancestors, man, you're crazy. That's all I can say. You're just crazy. But I want to go on. Okay, here we go. Kidnapping of Pocahontas. I was trying to remember the Samuel Argyle. Now, supposedly Samuel Argyle was kidnapped by some Indians, and then was it Samuel, either Samuel Argyle or the John, whatever his name is, that Pocahontas married. I can't keep up with these lies. But anyways, sometimes mythological stories are presented to us as if they are historical or scientific fact. I believe that is just wrong. Why, you may ask? Fair question. Because when we accept myths as fact, often we overlook the symbolism in the story that actually explains its true meaning. I believe this is done to intentionally confuse and often to hide the truth. For instance, many of us have heard the story of the Native American girl known as Pocahontas, who was kidnapped by Jamestown settlers in the year 1613. There are multiple versions of this myth, but the version I want to speak about, the myth goes on to explain that Pocahontas, while under besiegement, fell in love with one of the settlers, a man known as John Smith. What they often fail to tell us is that Pocahontas' father claimed she was only 10 or 11 at the time of the capture, and that John Smith was born in 1580. He was born in 1580, and so which made him at least 33 at the time when Pocahontas was captured, and she was 10 or 11. Now, also, many fail to understand that a child in a state of duress, such as being kidnapped, cannot make a firm decision pertaining to marriage or anything else as far as that's concerned. Some stories state that Pocahontas changed her name to Rebecca and eloped to England. But we know that John Smith was laid to rest in 1633 at the largest church in the city of London, St. Sepulchre without Newgate Church. But no one knows where Pocahontas or Rebecca's remains are. Yet there are monuments in her dedication here in America and in England. Now, that makes no sense. I mean, if you guys got married, you eloped back to England together, it would seem that her gravestone would be somewhere near his. So what's the misinterpretation here? What's going on? Obviously, this is a myth, and the myth is used to cover up some truth. Now, other myths tell us that while being held captive by the settlers, Pocahontas was indoctrinated with Christianity. She was said to have brought this strange doctrine back to the camp of Indians, quotation mark, Indians, and sowed discord into the ranks. This explanation seems quite viable, as we know historically that religion and Christianity as one of the main ones has been a very useful tool to the indoctrination of divide and conquer used among natives during all colonization campaigns. Now, common sense tells me that even if the myth of Pocahontas is not true, the story itself could affect the consciousness of natives and settlers alike, drawing emotions of discontent within and between the two societies. And that's exactly what it did. I mean, there were war after war after war as these colonists, as they call themselves, colonizers, as President Bush would have said, as those colonizers just pushed themselves onto the land, taking, you know. Now, this verifies that mythological stories presented as fact can become dangerous, in this case causing more animosity between people, leading to bloodshed, as many wars were fought between the Native Americans and settlers who all had received one or more versions of this myth. It is very important to note that the myths of Pocahontas are strikingly similar to the myths surrounding Helen of Troy or Helen of Sparta, who also was kidnapped and later eloped with her captor, if you believe the story, you know. All right. Even the title of this myth is deceiving, as the story is part of a larger myth, which is part of Homer's Iliad, or the Iliad, which is accredited to Homer. Which, I mean, all the whole thing behind Homer is another myth. It's myth on top of myth, pseudo information on top of pseudo information, some would say. Now, while I don't agree that Greeks invented mythology, I do agree that they've used it extensively in their literature. In fact, I don't know of a Greek document that doesn't employ mythology and symbolism. And let's keep in mind that the earliest Bible that we know of is the Septuagint, which was written in Greek. So, I mean, man, it's a whole lot of correlation here. Also, I might add that the popularity and power wielded by the Greeks assured that their documents, for the most part, were not destroyed by later empires. But we know that the Greeks, while compiling the information they used to create these myths, killed many people throughout the ancient world, and after confiscating the tablets and scrolls they found throughout their lands, the lands we call Egypt or Kemet, Babylon, Persia, India, and many more, it was commonplace for the Greeks to have book burnings and destroy multitudes of information held by those that they conquered, only after recording it for themselves. So, I mean, this is where a lot of the misinformation comes from. Getting back to Homer's Iliad, Helen, who was considered to be the most beautiful woman in Greece, was married to Menelaus, the king of Sparta. So, in some circles, Helen is known as the Queen of Sparta, but she's also known as the Queen of Troy. Why is she known as the Queen of Troy? We'll have to go into that. Okay, going back to the story. Now, Paris, who was the king of Troy, um, he actually won Helen's hand in marriage. We have to go back to how he won Helen's hand in marriage. And this is the judgment of Paris. We might say the judgment of Paris was the first beauty contest in history. Unfortunately, the outcome of this contest was terrible, nothing less than Trojan War. The story begins with the wedding of Thetis and Peleus, where all the gods had been invited except Eris. And Eris was the queen of discord, or she was known as the goddess of discord. Nobody liked her because she was such a troublemaker, full of envy. She thought about a plan to ruin the party. A good psychologist, she came up with a simple solution. She went to the wedding and threw a golden apple in the middle of the guests. Then she left, laughing all the time. A goddess picked up the golden apple and saw there was something written on it, "To the fairest." For a moment there was silence until Hera came up and said, "Then it is for me. Let me have it, please." Athena, the goddess of wisdom, didn't behave wisely at all. She said, "It can't be yours because I am the fairest. Let me have it." So I mean, this is the Discord that